Okay. And then what do you think? Like, okay. Boundaries, yeah.
And then
Because that's boundaries, guys. All right. Okay, it's gonna be a good one, I think. I love the topic because I won't lie to you, I actually struggled. Maybe I did growing when I was young, I think I didn't even understand what boundaries was. And even I did struggle with boundaries. I had to do a lot of research and everything before I know, okay, now this is how it works. So it's a good topic.
well, we're gonna get in some personal experience because nobody's good at boundaries. You learn to get good at
Yeah,
boundaries.
you learn it.
All right, shall we rock and roll?
Let's go.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Decoding Dating. My name's Adam Melnick. I'm a licensed coach with the International Coaching Federation with over a decade of experience in mental health and addictions, and I'm with my friendly co-host.
Hi everyone, my name is Evelyn and I'm a matchmaker and also the founder of Love Circle, a single community. And I'm so excited to be here with you. So I don't know what are we talking about today.
Oh my gosh. So I was talking with a client, and this client was struggling with boundaries. So, what was happening in their relationship was their needs weren't quite being met, and they felt like they were being walked on. And in talking with them, it was clear that they were just allowing their partner to do whatever they wanted in the relationship. And that was making her rather uncomfortable. And in chatting with her, it was clear it's like, oh no, you need to set boundaries.
Mm,
And like we hear this word, but we don't understand why we even do it or why we even set them out. And in the conversation, she's like, well, I could never set boundaries. What if he leaves me? What if he finds somebody else? What if it's like, I understand that. And what will be will be. However, boundaries are there to protect you from what's going on out here. And it sounds like we're not protecting ourselves. And so I figured, holy moly, if my clients are struggling with boundaries, we should definitely talk about this.
yeah, for sure. I think boundaries is what I think a lot of people struggle with boundaries. And I could understand the fear from having to set boundaries to more like it's to protect yourself, right? But the fear of loss that comes from that for her. And I think if you set healthy boundaries, and anybody lives, I think they're not meant to be in your life in the first place. So it's more for you, not for the person, right? But it's for you. It's to protect yourself physically, emotionally, mentally. So it's all about you, and also not like you're not considering the other person too, but you know, if you can't take care of yourself, how can you take care of somebody else, right? So, yeah, a lot of people struggle with boundaries. Even including me, I struggled, but I'm grateful that I had to do a lot of work just to ensure that I set that in place. So, yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I'll be the first one to admit I kind of suck at boundaries. I'm
Mhm.
really good with boundaries when it comes to my job. When it comes to a personal relationship, I kind of suck at it. I'm getting better. And for me, it's always been that fear of loss, the fear of
Mm,
rejection, the fear of like, oh, if I set boundaries with this person, they're going to walk away and I'm never going to find somebody else.
mm,
And I know that's not true. Like it's
yeah.
a lie, it's a story I'm telling myself. And when it comes down to it, like one of the things I had to learn was if I'm with somebody who won't respect my boundaries, is that somebody I should be with?
Mm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that's it. And I think it is normal to feel like, okay, if I have to set these boundaries, it's I might lose this person. Like you said, if someone doesn't respect your boundaries, then they don't deserve to be in your life. So boundaries is not kind of control. It's more like this is what I want, and this is how I want to be treated, something like that. And then you need to also be able to respect the other person as well, you know. So there's no point setting a boundary, having boundaries up, and then you can't even respect someone else's boundary. But I think the idea of, oh, maybe I may not find someone else, I think that's a lie that a lot of people actually, you know, tend to stay in a particular relationship that is not working, that it's miserable, just because the fear of, I may not find somebody like this person that is not even good enough, right? So so yeah, just so I believe relationship is meant to be balanced, and I believe that it should be, you know, loving, it should be safe. And if you don't feel that safety, then you need to question or ask yourself questions about the relationship and see what you need to do. If it's boundary that you need to put in place, which most of the time it is, go for it. And I think sometimes it's even good for you to know if somebody is for you or not. You know, there's a lot of boundaries that you could set. For example, if someone is constantly always aggressive and screaming at you when they're just talking about the slightest, they're just having a misunderstanding or whatever, they're always screaming, and then your boundaries could be, you know, you could tell them that, you know, I do not appreciate that tone of voice, I would rather just take a break. That stuff, that's an example of a boundary. And if they don't respect that, they keep chasing you around the house, screaming at you, that's someone not respecting that. That's even a toxic behavior to start with. So, and you stepping out of that, of the space, is a way of protecting yourself so that you do not do something that you will regret, or say something that you regret later on, right? And if that person doesn't respect that, then do you want to marry someone like that, right? That doesn't even know how to communicate or doesn't know how to respect your space or your boundaries. So, yeah.
Well, I love what you said about respect because I remember back in my nursing days, I worked at the front desk and I would have many clients that would come up to my front desk and they would yell at me because I was the gatekeeper. I was keeping them from seeing the doctor. I was keeping them from getting medications that they weren't supposed to have. I was keeping them from getting what they wanted. And so oftentimes they would be very rude or vulgar or start yelling at me. And I would have to set boundaries. And I'd say to them, hey, man, I need you to lower your tone. If you can't lower your tone, unfortunately, we're not going to have this conversation moving forward. Is the boundary of like, I need to be respected. I need to be heard. And if you can't do that, this isn't a conversation we're going to have. And
Yeah.
sometimes what would happen is they would say, oh, I'm sorry. And then we'd have a polite conversation and it's awesome. But many times I would have them where they would just walk on my boundaries and they'd be like, oh, yeah. And then we would start yelling even further. And I think the biggest problem with boundaries is when somebody disrespects them, we often just want to capitulate at that point. It's like, oh, yeah, yeah, you can yell at me. It's like, no, they can't. And the important part is like just to walk away.
Mm,
It's the same thing in your example. It's like if your man's getting all uppity with you and yelling, and you say, this isn't okay, and then he doesn't respect it, like you have to follow through and just walk away.
mm.
Else you end up teaching him your boundaries are nothing. They're worthless.
Exactly. Exactly. A friend was telling me about like a partner, like business partner, and she said they had an event and it was all rude. It was just rude. Like that day, it was just rude. It was the way he was speaking to her. Even like he was making comments that were really terrible, and she was giving excuses like, oh, I think it's just because it's been a tough day, I think it's just been stressed and frustrated, I think. But she was like, but I don't like it, I don't like him speaking to me like that. And she was like, okay, maybe I'm just going to give him some distance so that we don't it doesn't occur or happen again. I'm like, no, the distance, you have to teach him how to treat you. So you call him and ask him that you need to talk and tell him you do not appreciate the way he spoke to you the other day. Because I believe that you can be frustrated, you can be stressed, but you shouldn't treat people rude, you shouldn't be mean, you should still be respectful, because that's your true character. When you're frustrated and you're stressed, and that's when you're so mean, that's your true, that's the way. For me, I feel like regardless of what you're going through, you know, because the other person did not cause that, regardless, be nice. You can pass information in the nicest, like even if the person is annoying, there's a way you could say it. You could say, you know what, I'm not happy right now. This is what you did, in a respectful way that they will get the message. But for no reason does it have the right to be rude to you. And I think you need to communicate that, because if you don't, it's going to do that again, and you're still going to be feeling this way. So please talk to him, let him know that it said something that hurt you, and that you do not want that again. Tell him that it's not just hurt, but you do not want that to happen again. So he knows that. But don't just shove it and hope that it will go away or it will change, you know.
No, and you have to be crystal clear. I always say with my clients, sometimes my clients come up to me and they say, "Oh, I'm so angry. Can I swear?" Like, listen, man, you can swear, you can be angry in this space. You cannot swear and be angry at me. That's the boundary. If you're swearing and being angry at me, that's no, no. But you can tell me how awful your boss is. You can tell me how awful your dates are. You can swear at all the awfulness in your life. Go ahead. Can't do it towards me. And it's important to set these boundaries. One of the things that comes to mind in regards with boundaries is the cost of not setting them. And
Mm,
you touched on it, which is like you are essentially sacrificing yourself. You're sacrificing your needs, your wants, what your dreams, your hopes. And the question is, for what?
for what, right? So yeah, like we talked about different examples of boundaries. We know there's emotional boundaries, there's communication boundaries, there is physical boundaries. I was gonna add up. Have you really? Okay, I know you talked about the physical boundaries. Where was it? Like when someone was talking to you, like was yelling at you at your job? Is that, would you call that an example of physical boundaries, or you know, like if you're going to group that?
Well, the weird thing is, I don't really look at boundaries as like physical boundaries or emotional boundaries. It more along the lines of it's usually what are you not okay with? Like, what are you genuinely not okay with? And whether that is being touched by somebody, whether that is being emotionally abused by somebody, whether it's being a certain word that they're using, maybe they're calling you stupid. And it's
Mm,
like, what are you not okay with? And then it's very clearly articulating, I am not okay with A, that I am not okay with this. And then it's, if you continue to do this, this will happen. And then I always see it as the process of, if they continue to do it, then you just follow through. And it's that consistency with the boundaries, whether it be a physical boundary. So if somebody touched me and said, hey, man, please don't touch me. And then if they keep touching me, it's like, hey, if you do that again, this is what's going to happen. And they're well aware. And now they're choosing. They get to choose if they want that result or not. And if
yeah,
they do, we follow through.
yeah, yeah. That's good. Yeah. So I think the goal was it's based on how it makes you feel. And I think there are different type of boundaries, example of boundaries, but the main thing is, how does this make me feel? How does this, the goal is to protect yourself, right? Is to protect yourself. And if it's, you're not feeling protected, you're not feeling safe, you're not feeling respected, then you need to do something about it. You need to set a kind of boundaries in place to protect you at that point in time. So I wonder why a lot of people feel like boundaries create some type of distance. You know, I don't remember we talked about the fact that, oh, if I have to set boundaries, like the example you gave in the beginning, that she felt like if she set the boundary, it might leave. And you talked about that too, right? So why do people see boundaries as something that tend to want to give distance or loss or create loss?
Well, I know what I see a lot of is more that fear. Like
Yeah.
it's that fear, almost like a gremlin on their shoulder, whispering in their ears. And they're whispering conspiracy theories. Like they're not true, but they're saying, if you set boundaries, if you don't, if you stand up for yourself, they're not going to like it, and they're going to do A, B, C. And it's like maybe they will, maybe they won't. But I see a lot of just that. fear aspect of that distance, and that not wanting to be alone, not wanting to experience loss, grief. They don't want to go back out in the dating market because of how awful it is, and
Yes.
they just want to almost like settle.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like the main goal of boundaries is actually to protect the relationship. Like it's good for the relationship, I would say. Because for example, if someone is yelling at you, like your spouse or your partner is yelling at you, and you choose to, just say, okay, you know what, communicate, I believe, respectfully, and say, you know what, babe, I don't want to talk right now because I do not want us to keep arguing. I will just step down to cool off. That way, you've kind of set the tone for peace in that moment, because you could easily be exchanging words and that could escalate, and before you know it, could even go violent if you're not careful. But in the long run, you're teaching each other basically how to communicate. I've seen a lot of couple that will say, you know what, in this house we do not curse, we do not yell, and those are boundaries that are setting in place just to ensure that the relationship is healthy. So in the long run, boundaries is actually there not just to protect you, but also to help and to protect it, to create a healthy environment, healthy balance in the relationship.
Well, I love that you said that because they absolutely are. Without boundaries, I don't think you can have a healthy relationship. And they're critical because what I've noticed, especially with bullies or people that kind of like to walk on others, is if you don't set boundaries with them, they'll get worse.
Mm,
I remember reading an interview. I can't remember who it was, but it was this gentleman who was essentially bullying in the workplace. He's a bit of a psychopath, to be honest, like legitimate one. And they asked him. They said, "You kept picking on this individual continuously. Why didn't you stop? Why did it get progressively worse and worse and worse and worse?" And he said, "I wanted to see how far I could push them."
mm,
And the weird part is if you stood up to this guy, it would have been awful. Absolutely, it would have been awful. However, he would have understood that there was this boundary and it wouldn't have gotten so bad. It wouldn't have gotten worse. It's
yeah.
kind of messed up to think about.
I feel like even in friendship, in relationship, even at workplace, people tend to want to just test you. They want to see how far they can go with you. And that is where the boundaries come. Like, I remember, like, at work at a particular time, and a lady just came to me and one of my colleagues, and the way she was speaking to me was so rude. And I was the first person, like, that was very early. I was just stepping into the office. And I'm like, I had to talk to her. I said, like, I'm very intentional about my morning, and I said, this is not how to speak to me in the morning. If you needed something to talk to me, send me an email and I'll come see you later. You know? And she was like, yeah, I think she was a bit, she was surprised I would say that. She was surprised I would push back. And she went to report, and I was like, I repeated the same thing. I'm like, this is how I'm doing my job. I've not done anything out of place. I do not appreciate this. I said the same thing. Like, I do not appreciate, because I do not want to spend my day knowing that she could do that. She could talk to me again like that. So for me, it's like, yeah. And after that, we became very respectful to each other. we became, yes, we became respectful. We even became friends. So sometimes some people would test you. They want to test how far they can go with you. And it is your responsibility to teach them how to treat you. Basically, if you don't, they can work on you, all over you. They can go as far as whatever, but you have to be the one to teach people how to treat you. And I think that's what where boundary comes in.
Oh, absolutely. Because let's be honest, nobody knows how to treat you the way you want to be treated. Only you do. You have to teach people. And that's one thing I kind of get annoyed with when I talk to some of my clients because they say, well, I want a man who's chivalrous. It's like, okay, who taught him that? Like, who teaches men how to be chivalrous? And they said, well, society does. I'm like, society doesn't teach people that. I'm sorry to tell you this, which means that if there may come a point that you have to teach your man how to be chivalrous and what that means to you. But it's the same thing with a woman. It's like, I want my woman to be elegant. It's like, okay, but who would teach her that? And you sometimes have to teach your partner what it means to respect you and how you want to be treated. And you have to put those boundaries up, or else they don't know. Like, they just don't know. And it's not their fault.
And I think that's why it's very important to talk about this thing at the beginning of dating. At least the first few weeks of dating, I think it's very important that you, as much as you're trying to tell them or share your experiences, or you're asking those important questions, it's good to let them know that this is the kind of boundaries that I set in place. Every Friday I like to hang out with my friends, and I don't see, I feel like that gives me balance and that makes me happy, and I would love to continue doing that. So which means you've already kind of set that boundaries, you've communicated that with him. And then if he comes and say, oh babe, I would like to hang out with you on Friday. Now, so it depends on the, okay, so what, just to hang out, right? That's really, we could hang out any other day, but why this specific day when I told you this? Could we hang out on a different day? Right? So, and if he's keep insisting, or is intentionally doing that just because he doesn't want you to spend time with your friends, because there's some people that want to take all your time, they don't want you to have any other friends, just them. They want to control the relationship that way. That is not good. And if you've communicated that to them over and over again, and they intentionally do that, then that's something that you need to revisit and communicate again. And if it keeps continuing and you see that it's a pattern, then that's a good thing about boundaries, because it is not just that particular act, like don't on Friday night. It tells you a lot about the person, you know.
It kind of reminds me. I used to work out in a served community treatment, and on Wednesday I had to work with borderline personality disorders, and I used to call it my borderline Wednesdays. And they were terrible with my boundaries. They tried to walk on me so many times. And I remember talking to one of the psychologists that I worked with, and they said, Adam, you need to understand, these people are sheep, and the boundaries are the pen. And the thing is, they're going to jump over the fence. That's what they're going to do. Our job is to pick them back up and put them in the fence.
Hmm.
Like, this is just what we have to do. And just like in this example, if this guy's like taking up all your time on Fridays, it's saying, hey, reinforce the boundary. I can't
Mhm.
do this on Fridays. Like, I don't mind giving up one Friday for you. However, I need to see my friends. And it's just constant reinforcing. And one of two things is going to happen. Either one, they're going to get it and they're going to respect that boundary, or two, they're not going to get it, in which case I think it's just time to move on.
And I think what people tend to do is, oh, maybe I'm just going to let him. Some people tend to change their life as soon as they have a boyfriend. Basically, they change their life to fit into that boyfriend, and they cancel everything, appointment, those things that makes them happy before they met the boyfriend. Or maybe they could even set a boundary, and the guy would just be like, kind of test it and test it. And she's like, she let go. She let go. She let go. She relaxes. And it tells the guy something about you. It tells him that you don't even respect yourself enough for him to respect the boundaries. Like if you have to always shift things, change things around, or just to fit into his demands all the time, men, women, it tells them that you do not take your own things very important. And when you start experiencing disrespect from that man, don't be surprised. You'll be wondering, why does he disrespect me? Why does he not respect my view? Because you taught him that you're you don't even respect your own plans. You don't even respect yourself. Then why do you expect someone else to respect you, or to honor you when you don't even honor yourself? So sometimes, and that's, it goes back to, you teach people, or you teach people how to treat you, or you kind of show them how you take yourself. Like, do you take yourself seriously or not? and then it won't do the same, right?
Well, and again, it's that if you don't even respect yourself, why should they respect you? That's a that's actually a pretty good question right then there.
Yeah.
But yeah, when it comes to boundaries, you have to set them. They are kind of a respect thing. In regards with boundary setting, I'd love to hear your idea on this because a lot of people are scared of setting up boundaries and they come up with all these excuses. And one of the excuses I hear quite often is like, yeah, but that's selfish. Me putting boundaries in place is selfish. I don't want to be a selfish person. I want to be a caring, loving person. And I would love to hear what you would say to this individual to just be like, hey, of course boundaries are selfish because they inherently are, but they kind of need to get done.
Mm. Yeah, I think, yeah, some people, okay. So I think boundaries is not very selfish. Audit is not really, is self-love some way. It's not really, some people, like the other person can see that selfish. Like, oh, if she says, maybe you guys go on a date and she said, I just would like about, I don't want the intimacy right away. I just would like to get to know you. And that's what I've always done in relationships, blah, blah, blah. So it is up to him to say, yeah, I would see that, look at that, she's so selfish, after spending so much money or time with you, that at least the least is to, the other person may see you as being selfish, right? But for you, you're only setting those boundaries. It's not selfish. It's not really selfish. I say it's self-love, and it's self a way to protect yourself. And also because you are intentional about that relationship, you want to know the person for the person's good too. Because if you know him, you know how to love them better. So in a way, it could be seen as being selfish from the other and from the other person. But then it depends on how you're able to communicate it. Like, okay, babe, this is why I prefer it like this, or this is what I've always done, and because that way makes me even get to know you better without getting clouded, or whatever. So the guy you could put it in a way that he sees the value in actually going in that direction, and it'll be like, okay, it's not just you thinking about yourself. At the end of the day, it's gonna help both of us. In a way, there's some boundaries that you have to be selfish about. Selfish is not always bad, but there's some things that you have to be selfish about, whichever one is a toxic place. If you're in a toxic environment, toxic situation, you have to think about yourself at that moment, because the person's behavior is not selfless anyway. If someone is yelling at you or throwing things, being violent, there is no way to be selfless about it, right? You just have to protect yourself, especially when you're on the plane. There's a crash is about to happen. You put the mask first on yourself. So that way, at that point in time, you're trying to protect just you at that point. So yeah, be selfish. There are situations where you have to present it. You think it from a very kind of like a collective like view. Like, okay, this is why I'm doing this. You don't yell at me because we shouldn't speak to each other like this. It's not healthy. If we're going to get married, we want to create a healthy environment so our kids can also learn how to communicate. There's a way you can present it, because you could present in a way that is so rude and so mean, and the person will feel like you're only thinking about yourself, right? So it depends on how you communicate, and you have to let them see that it's for our good, right? You know, so different situations sometimes, yeah.
Well, and it is good for the relationship. Like it, in a weird way, yeah, it is inherently selfish because it's all about protecting you. However, when you look at a relationship, you're 50% of the problem, they're the other 50% of the problem. And I mean, if you want to frame it, you could say you're 50% of the solution, they're the other 50% of the solution. And if you're not setting boundaries and you're getting walked on, you're going to become angry. You're going to become resentful and you might check out. And then the real question is, do you have a relationship at that point? And
Mm.
the answer I guarantee is going to be no.
Mm. Yeah, I think some people kind of confuse boundaries, right? Because some people use boundaries as control. So I think we should play a game. I don't know if you're open to this, but I'm going to say something. We're going to say, is this boundary or not? And maybe why? Does that make sense?
Ooh.
So let's go. Like, okay, so now I'm going to say scenario now. So I told my partner that I need time to cool off before discussing a conflict, but they keep calling and testing until I respond. So is this boundaries or avoidance or not?
In my head, I'm hearing a lot of avoidance. I hear like the start of a boundary, like I need time to cool off. And then I'm not hearing the part of like, okay, but if you keep bugging me,
Mm.
what's going to happen? Like if you keep harassing me when I need cooling off, like what are the consequences of that? And then I'm hearing an avoidant piece of like, well, they keep talking to me and I just keep ignoring them. And it's like, it sounds like you're kind of avoiding them. Like you're trying to set a boundary, but you're kind of more ignoring them.
Yeah, I think I agree. So, like, yeah. So basically, what you're saying is you're saying something like, "This is what I'm going to do." Oh, okay. This is what I don't like, and if you keep doing this again, this is what would happen, right? But more like it's like they're actually trying to avoid. They're not really. They're just like avoid the situation. Basically, they're not really trying to set. It's not a boundary. It's not like a complete boundary. I'll say, right?
Mhm. They're
Okay.
trying to set something, but then
So, but
the
it's
guy
not.
keeps pushing, and it's like, okay, but you're just being walked on. Like you're not setting a
Mhm.
boundary.
It's true. It's not setting boundary. Another one is I asked my partner not to post photo of us until we both feel ready to share the relationship publicly. Now, so now is this and then the person end up posting the photo.
Okay.
What do you think? Like, is that boundaries? Is that
I think that is a very clear boundary. It's clearly articulating, hey, this I don't want this to happen. This is this is what I would like instead. They've clearly stated it. There's not the consequences aspect of it. It's like if you do it, this is going to happen, which is it sounds fine in this case. However, if the person then posts that, there has to be consequences. Like they kind of you've talked about it, they didn't respect you, and now you have to kind of talk about it. Like there's that follow up piece all of a sudden.
so like how do you balance that though in like that relationship? Like no, there are couples that they can't wait to share their relationship status to to the world, and there are couples that you know sorry, it's just some flies, and that some people. So how do you balance that transparency? Like how do you balance that? Because I don't think I like the idea of private until wedding. Sometimes you want to show off your man, right? So how could you create an effective boundaries that kind of serve both of you in this type of social media scenario? Oh, check.
Well, and I think this kind of gets into the idea that boundaries are not just a one way street; they're a two-way street. So the rule of thumb is usually if I ask you a question about how your day was, they get to ask me the question about how my day was. And the same thing goes with boundaries. If I get to set boundaries, they get to set boundaries. And so if I'm going to stand out here and say, well, I don't really want to post pictures of us until we're both ready, then you have the absolute liberty to say, I hear you and I can understand that. I'm not comfortable with this nebulous kind of when you're ready. I would like to show you off. Is there a time frame that we can work between? So it sounds like negotiation because it is, but it's also setting up a boundary of like, okay, I hear you, I see your boundary. However, I'm not okay with this. And so let's talk about it.
Yeah, I think I like that. I think it goes back to sometimes how you communicate, right? And there should be clarity. There should be timeline. Some situation there'll be timeline. There's some situation where you have to negotiate and come to like an agreement that works for both of us. So it's not like someone wants to share and the person is like not. It's like conflict. Like one is unhappy, why the other person is comfortable not sharing, and that one feels like she wants to share, but it's not like agreement, there's no timeline, there's nothing. So yeah, I think I kind of like it. Yeah, I think those are the two scenarios I have.
Well, I got a scenario. I got a scenario
Okay.
for you, and I
Okay.
want to hear your thoughts on
All
this.
right, let's yes, yeah.
because I've heard the scenario a couple of times now, and it's I don't like it when you drink
Mm,
because it makes me feel uncomfortable.
okay. I don't like it when it drinks because it makes me feel. So okay. So one thing is with that, yeah. So you've passed the message across, right?
You
But
said something.
you said something. But I think it's very, in a way, I look at it in two different ways. Like when you met the person, you know they drink, right? So why when did it get to the point where the drinking now becomes uncomfortable for you, right? Or I think there's or you or there's a better way to say that. So okay, why is drinking uncomfortable for you? Right? I think it's more clarity around that. Does it remind you of a kind of maybe trauma? Does it trigger you in anywhere? Is it bringing, I don't know, like, or is it kind of, I don't know, does it make you feel nausea or whatever? But I think that is not a boundary. It's more like just your communication, just saying, making a statement, basically, because you're not giving a reason why it makes you feel uncomfortable and why are you feeling uncomfortable right now, because it's something that you should have discussed earlier on in the relationship. If you don't want someone that drinks, then go find someone that doesn't drink. It will be unfair for you to try to force them to quit drinking when they don't want to. It's something if they're alcoholic and they're always drunk, every outing that you guys go to, then you could say, babe, I don't think I appreciate you always getting drunk whenever we go out, especially when I'm with my friends. So you consider there's more layers to that. So my friends, so I appreciate if we can just have one or two drinks and we can come home and get drunk. So you're creating like even options for that. And I think they would understand it. They would respect that. But when you just make a vague statement like that, it's not clear. And there's a lot of questions that follows after that, basically. So I think that's not a clear boundary.
Yeah, I don't think it's a boundary. I think it's just you stated,
Yes,
I just don't like it when you drink because it just makes me feel this way. It sounds more like a discussion.
yeah, it's a discussion, it's a statement.
And yeah, and it pokes more questions like, okay, why does it make you feel uncomfortable? What's changed within the relationship that you had felt like you had to say that? And I guess the next question I would have for you is I know there's not a lot of text or conversation I've given in regards with this statement, so we can make it up as we go. However, how do we change this statement into one of this is now a boundary?
Okay.
How would you go about
Okay.
that?
Okay. Okay. The same statement you gave, right?
Yeah, so
Okay.
instead of I don't like it when you drink, it
Mm,
makes me feel uncomfortable.
mhm.
How would you change that into a boundary statement to clearly articulate, no, this is a line I'm not okay with?
Okay. So now, because we don't have, okay, I will create kind of like a more picture around it. And I would say something like, oh, babe, I've noticed that whenever we go out to drink with our friends, you tend to drink more bottles and you tend to be tipsy and drunk, and the way you communicate after that, I don't really appreciate it. I would really appreciate it if we can just have one or two drinks and we can also maybe buy wine on our way and we can get drunk at home or whatever, you know what I'm saying? Oh, okay, that's a communication, but I'll say, yeah, I could say, oh, babe, I don't appreciate blah blah blah, like you, the way you drink outside, so because if you keep doing that, I don't think this relationship feels safe for me, you know. You've said, and I don't think I can continue like this. So you cannot set a play you've communicated. So I think boundaries is like a full picture of, babe, this is what usually happens when we go out with our friends, and I do not appreciate any every time you get drunk because you tend to just say things about relationship that doesn't sound respectful. But if you want to continue drinking, I'm not going to limit you. We can always buy wine on our way and we can get drunk together and watch a nice movie. Because the next time you go to the point of actually getting drunk like that and disrespecting for my friends, I don't think I want a relationship with like that anymore. Like I think I'm just gonna step out. I think I'm just going to do so. I think I'm just gonna leave and come home. right? So you let him know that you do not, you give him more explanation to why it is you do not feel comfortable, and what would happen if it happens again. You step out, you end the relationship, you call him out, blah blah blah, right? I think.
Well, I love that you said it that way because it's pretty much kind of what I would say along the lines of, hey, babe, I've noticed that when you're drinking, you tend to get very belligerent and you start talking very poorly of me. I'm not okay with that happening. If it continues to happen in public, I don't think this relationship can continue further. And that's kind of more of a hard boundary, but I love how there's that compromise of like, you know what, I'm not okay with that happening. If you want, we can drink at home and kind of satisfy your needs, but I'm not okay with us doing it in public and having this end result. Is
Hmm.
it's beautiful how you said it at the end
Yeah.
of the day, because it's like I am not okay with A. If we B keeps happening, we'll go to C. But if you change your behavior, who the hell cares?
Yeah, I think you're giving them options, right? Because for some people, drinking is a way to relax, right? So if you're going to say, "Oh, don't drink," you kind of maybe it may feel some type of way. So come to that balance of, what, I'm not trying to take something from you, but I'm just trying to communicate how something makes me feel, whatever. We can come home and drink afterward. And then most of the time I was like, oh, babe, that's okay. I don't even, I think 2 bottles, you could even shape their life that way and say, I don't think I should be drinking more anymore. Maybe 2 bottles is always good. Or maybe, but I think it's always good to look at it from both angle as well. It's not like you're trying to prevent them from socializing, but you're trying to respect the relationship one, and also express your feelings without having to feel like a loss, because from both sides, right?
Exactly. This is where the I statements kind of come in handy because oftentimes when I hear people set boundaries up, for example, the drinking, it's like, you get drunk and you disrespect me and you
Mhm.
make me feel like shit. And it puts them on the back foot. But if you start using I statements instead of say, hey, when you're out drinking, you start saying these comments and you're making me feel this way. And I don't like feeling this way. And I would like da 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 da. And
Mhm.
it kind of shifts the tone of the conversation of like, this is
Mhm.
what your actions are doing. This is how it's making me feel.
Mhm.
This is what I would like to feel instead.
Mhm.
Simple as that.
Mhm. Yeah, so that's actually a good one. That's a good one, because I think a lot of people struggle with even communicating boundaries, and we tend to wonder why, when we communicate the boundary, the person is not following through. So sometimes it could be the way you say it, the tone, is when you, after the boundaries, communicate your boundaries, there are still questions, just like what you said, the statement about, I don't, the way you drink make me uncomfortable. There's a lot of questions that come around that, like a lot of questions that follows after that. So is it clear? Is it coming from a selfish point of view, or what is the focus? Like, what is the idea behind the boundary? Is it going to make us better as a couple, or is it just going to create more gap in the relationship? Right? What is the value to the relationship? These boundaries, you know. There's a difference between when someone is not safe for you or someone is not ideal for you, then that's a different situation. But when both of you are on the same page in trying to help them out, like make the relationship work, then I think it's always good to come from a very um, collective, I mean, that's right, view, or when you're, creating
Well,
that. Yeah.
and collective is the key word.
Yeah.
Because when I see boundaries, I see both sides. So it's like a sliding scale. There's people with really shitty boundaries, and then people that have too many boundaries.
Mm.
And boundaries jobs are always to protect you. However, the other person gets a say in your boundaries, whether you're aware of it or not. And I've seen relationships where, for example, I actually had a friend who was dating a girl, and the girl started putting all these boundaries up around him. It's like, you can't talk to other women. I'm not okay with you talking to other women. I'm not okay with you going out by yourself. I'm not okay with you. And she started putting up all these boundaries. really to protect her and make her feel safe, because she had been with a guy who had cheated on her, had done these awful things. So she put up all these boundaries. The issue being is that I looked at him and I said, "Is your life worth living with all these boundaries?" And he sat there and he goes, "No, I'm miserable. Like, I can't do anything."
Mm,
And is that question of, is this a relationship worth being in? Because now this woman was using boundaries as a way to kind of control
yeah.
him. And it was like, she needs to learn to loosen up on her boundaries and be okay with him living his life.
Mm,
And he needs to figure out, can he even make this work with this woman? And spoiler alert, it did not work out. He had to walk.
yeah. Yeah, that's not even just control. That's not even just control and selfish, because she is just basically thinking about herself and not thinking about the other person as well. There are some things that is just like logical. Like, you do not, when you're dating someone, you're supposed to be loyal. Especially those communicate that you're supposed to be loyal to each other, respect each other. Those things are part of it. But you have to say, hey, don't go out. An adult, don't go out by this time. Make sure you come back at this time. Don't like anybody's picture on. That's pure control. So because there's some things that is just not realistic, I would say. So yeah, so that's miserable to live in that type of situation or relationship.
Well, that's where it gets into the idea of, if you are doing that, it's being okay loosening up those boundaries. Because I've seen it. I've seen people get lost in the sauce when it comes to boundaries, and then they have way too many of them. Although I got a great question for you, because nobody likes it when they get boundaries set onto them. I remember when I was at work and I had somebody set boundaries with me, I got really angry. I'm like, how dare you? How dare you?
Right?
But this is a common response. People get hurt, they get offended, they get angry when somebody sets boundaries. And I guess the big question I have is, how do you just handle those emotions when somebody does that to you?
Mm. I think it's like I said, it's not always easy, but I think it's okay. Let's say at work, um, it's can be it can feel, you can feel like, yeah, sad, like you said, sometimes you can be feel frustrated, but I think, what is the goal? What is the goal of this? Like, what is the point of this? Some people can just be rude. It's just like my example with telling the lady, I don't appreciate you talking to me early in the morning, like speaking to me in this tone like this, at the end of the day, like I said, we ended up becoming friends. So what is the point of it? You're teaching the person is trying to teach you how to treat them or how to address them, whatever. If that if the relationship or the friendship is important to you, you should respect it. I think respect is important in any, type of relationship, work relationship, friend relationship. So if I speak to you in a rude way and you say, Evelyn, I don't appreciate that. If you're important to me, I would be okay with that. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'll be like, oh, I'm sorry. What will come from me would be, oh, I'm sorry I sounded that way. So it's coming from the place of understanding rather than defensiveness, or in whichever way you want to call it. But I think, if yeah, so based on, take it, I say, for me, I've always not, I respect, I rather prefer someone coming to me to tell me that, oh, Evelyn, I don't like what you did, da 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 da, than for you not to even say it and start holding grudges, right? So for me, there are times that for sure I'll be like, you may feel bad, but I always think about what is the reason behind it. And if the friendship or relationship is important to me, if the job is important to me, or working with this colleague would kind of, it's important, like, will affect my job somehow, then I need to ensure that I get to the point where I learn to work together with this person. So I would respect that, as long as they're not being rude, or but I will respect that. So just Take it with grace.
You take
You
it with
know.
grace, you smile, you accept it. In the moment, I've often found when I feel quite like, again, I get angry when people set boundaries with me, and this is normal. Like, it's
It's
normal
not
to have these
about
emotions. Nobody likes it when boundaries get set. Let's be honest. But it's important, like you said, just to take that step back and think about the other person.
yeah.
Think about what's going on. Think about the relationship as a whole. And maybe it's just talking to somebody you trust, not the fake friends that are going to be like, yeah, how dare they set boundaries? They're
Right.
real. No, it's like, no, like a genuinely a neutral party to help you understand, okay, maybe this is kind of a healthy thing.
Yeah, because some people are not used to boundaries and it's not healthy, actually. It's very important to have boundaries set in place because it makes you even sane. Like you are more like balanced mentally, right? Or emotionally, it's good for you. But I think boundaries is, like I said, it's always about the communication. Like if you communicate the boundaries in a way that is kind, I don't think I can get upset with that. Now, if you scream at me and be like, Evelyn, da, 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 oh, I'm going to be upset, even if I'm going to think about it later and still think, oh, I understand. I will not want to understand because from the get go, you're being disrespectful. You shouldn't scream at me. I'm not your child, right? But you can, and like I said, and I told my friend, like the one my friends told me about, the guy was frustrated. It was rude. It was speaking to you rudely, making rude remarks. You shouldn't do that. Regardless, you should call me, sit me down, or call me on the phone and say, Evelyn, I want to talk to you about something. This is what you did and I didn't like. And we appreciate it, to be frank with you. I would appreciate that because you're respecting me by even calling me. You respect me enough to want to talk to me about it instead of gossiping with other people, right? So I think I'm going to respect you. Two things will happen. Is that I cut you off because you know what I'm saying, like sometimes, or if you're important to me, I would listen and I will apply it. Two things can happen. So yeah.
Exactly. Two things are going to happen. Either they're going to cut you straight off or they're going to respect you.
That's it. Yeah. So yeah. The tone, communicating in the right way, communicate well, and people will listen to you. If you're rude, being rude is even an offense, right? Like it's wrong. Don't be rude. You cannot get anything done, or you cannot get any result. Most of the time, by being rude. So communicate that you don't like something, but in a nice way that the person can understand it, and from a point of view that is not just pointing to you only, right? The people can understand how it will benefit both end, but as some situation it has to be you when it's toxic and not pleasant situation. But yeah, you just have to take
Well,
a breath.
well, and this kind of gets into another kind of idea that I've had, which is, I know so many ideas today,
Which is great.
right? But many people don't have practice setting boundaries. Like
Mm,
they hear how to set boundaries, but when it comes to setting them, they struggle,
mm,
especially when it comes to their relationship, because in a weird way, that's a bridge too far. They're
yeah.
being talked down to, and they're too terrified to even set a boundary. And then the question is becomes, how do we teach these people, or how do they teach themselves how to set appropriate boundaries? Especially because there's easy boundaries we can set, and then there's really hard boundaries that
Mm,
have some serious consequences that they might be too scared of. What
mm,
would you say to these people?
mm. I think, like I said, I'm sure a lot of people struggle with boundaries. We have to learn these things. And I would say, now depending on the severity of the boundary or the, it's based on situation by situation. For example, you could have a family that is an addict, right? And they're constantly maybe stealing from you or doing all these crazy things. Now the boundaries that you set with that has to be tough, have to be really tough love. It could be, what, if you keep doing this, we're gonna cut you off. That is a crazy, crazy tough boundary. Now there are smaller boundaries, I would like call it lighter or smaller boundaries. I'll say if you I think it's more important to even understand what boundary is to start with, because I think some people confuse boundaries with other things. So on the other understanding of research and read about boundaries. And I think get clear on what you need in a relationship so that you're not setting unrealistic boundaries. Some people, and that's it gets that's why understand what boundary is in the first place, and understand what you need. What do you need in a relationship? What how do you want to feel safe in a relationship? What will make you feel loved in a relationship? Those are questions that you need to ask yourself. And then it's always very so when you know what you need, then you can communicate it in a very clear and calm way. That calmness is very important in a very
Well, and I just got to say this to you. I love that you say figure out what boundaries are, because I remember talking with a woman who said to her man, if you are not employed, we don't have a relationship. And in
Mm,
her mind, she's like, this is a boundary. This is a boundary. And I said, that's not a boundary. That's
mm-mm.
a condition for your love. That's
Thank you.
completely different.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
if your man is not employed, you don't love him. And that
Period.
is rough.
That's period. Or the other way you can look at that or make that into a boundary could be, babe, if you're constantly going to be making reckless decisions and losing your job every like every 3 months, because maybe they've had different jobs that through them always they're always calling sick or always being reckless or whatever, they keep losing their jobs. Then you could set boundaries to say, babe, if this continues, then we don't have a relationship anymore, like so that's a boundary. But if you skip, if there's a way you can present it to make it a boundary, because it's not that it just came out of the blue. It's something that they've consistently been doing and it's affecting your relationship, and then you can be clear about, and like I said, it goes back to how you say it, that in a way they can get it. It's not about you, it's I. Let them know how it makes you feel and how it affect the relationship, and so that and also I would say, yeah, be firm with your boundaries. Be firm with your boundaries, because boundaries teaches people how to treat you or respect you. So if you set a boundary and every other business days you keep releasing it, you said I don't want to do because of this, and then they test your boundary and they say, okay, just this one time, okay, just 2 time, 3 time. So you need to take yourself seriously. You need to take your boundaries seriously and stand firm and don't feel guilty about it. So I think that's what I would say, and stay consistent. Yeah.
Yeah. Be consistent with your boundaries. And I know a lot of people feel guilty when they first start out with boundaries. One of the things I always suggest is if you're new to boundaries and you're struggling with them, do it with somebody who is safe in your life. Like
Mm-hmm.
maybe it's a mom, maybe it's a dad, maybe it's a friend, that you are safe in that relationship. Set a boundary and see how they react. And set a small one, like set a really small one. Don't go whole hog. That's don't blow your life up. I've seen people do that. Just set a small boundary, see how it goes. And usually by just setting that small boundary there, it starts giving you a little bit of confidence to work on the bigger boundaries of like,
Mm-hmm.
you cannot drink because this is what happens and this is how it makes me feel. That's a big boundary to set. And if you're not used to them, that's kind of scary. So just start it small. Just work your way up.
Mm. And I think just based on what you're saying between small and big boundaries is, I think some people use boundary as a threat. Like I feel like some things in a relationship doesn't have to have. Some things could be small, but you could make it take it to a different level. For example, if you say, "Babe, I do I would appreciate it. I feel loved, and there's when you communicate like this, and I've noticed that blah 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 blah. But if you don't communicate like this, then I'm just going to break up with you." People say that, but it's more like it shows that
That
you've
just
been
sounds like an ultimatum at that point.
exactly like it's like. you're not thinking about both of you. You're basically just thinking about yourself. But you could say something like, babe, I think if we would need to address this, or we need to, do something together to make sure that you guys strengthen that communication. It's more like, babe, so you're proposing. It doesn't have to be negative all the time. Like, you're proposing that, babe, we might need to maybe register for that couples therapy or couples retreat. Something like, you're proposing that maybe there's something, maybe it could be that we need to work on our communication together and going to this retreat, you know. So if the person doesn't want to go to the retreat or whatever, it's like, okay, babe, I'm going to work on it. Okay, but it does not have to always have that negative. If you don't do this, then this will happen. If you don't do this, this bad thing will happen. And then they are constantly living in fear. Give them the opportunity to also be human, because the truth is, if you tell your partner, babe, I don't appreciate it when you always come home at 10:05. Maybe let's, because of our kids, blah 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 blah, or I want to spend more time, whatever. But then they come home one day and 1:05, and it's like, oh, like, give them that grace as well, because they're not human. But it becomes a problem when it is happening consistently, and that it is becoming a pattern, and they're intentionally testing you or trying to disrespect you. Then, but there's going to be point where, as human, is going to fall short sometimes, is going to fail sometimes, and give them that grace to understand that they are human being. But let us look at the pattern, let us look at the consistency in this behavior, and then address it and take it, like, real
You hit
firm.
the you hit the nail on the head. It's, people are going to screw up, and there's a big difference between a one-off screw up and it's consistently happening. And
Mm-hmm.
if it's consistently happening, you have to address it and you have to set those boundaries. And again, it's to protect you, but also to protect the relationship. And
Mm-hmm.
so everybody is ultimately feeling respected.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
I'm loving the conversation, and I have to say to my audience, or our audience here, if you guys are struggling with boundaries in relationships, or you need help kind of identifying what your boundaries are, feel free to reach out to either Evelyn or myself. Our link is down in the description. We're more than happy to sit down and say, let's work on this. Let's
Yeah.
get you into a healthy space to protect yourself, but also your relationship.
I do love that, because the goal is to be one of you safe in our relationship, one of you safe in all aspects of our life, be it work, be that with friends. So boundaries are good. So yeah,
They're not selfish.
yeah. Also, I mean, they're not good. Boundaries does not come with control, and loss is even part of it. Sometimes, boundaries help you to filter out the wrong people or the wrong situation is in your life. So loss
because
could happen. Yeah. So
because again, a right person for you will always respect your boundaries, no
mhm.
matter what.
Yeah, no matter how difficult. Yeah, yeah, it's actually a good one.
I love it. Well, if you guys found this video helpful, please like, subscribe, and share with somebody else that could use this information. Otherwise, I think we shall see you guys in the next episode. Take care.
Thank you. Bye for now.